preventive role. This study and the findings of the study were confirmed by others over the years. And so for me, it's really an additional privilege to be able to speak to you about the Mediterranean diet that was studied for the very first time in my region of Calabria. So what can communities, local communities, do? Well, I think that to begin with, we need to think in terms of a macro region, that of the Mediterranean, and think in terms of the sustainable production of foods that make up the basket of our diet. Because the availability of these assets is not infinite. It is not sufficient to uphold the importance of the Mediterranean diet just in European countries. The regions looking out onto the Mediterranean, especially in the south, can contribute in a very significant way to making these products and goods available. So I think that we need to think in terms of an agri-food district for the macro region of the Mediterranean. However, at the same time, we need to protect our diet from threats posed by climate change, for example. My colleagues, as well as the speaker, the ambassador who spoke before me, recalled that the Mediterranean is now being affected by a temperature rise that is a lot more striking than in other regions of the world. The Mediterranean is one of the regions, or the one region in the world, where significant processes of desertification are taking place, and it's the region in the world where most frequently we are witnessing droughts. So I think that we need a joint effort by territorial as well as national governments. It could be useful in order for us to more decisively tackle the challenges posed by climate change that threaten the foods making up the basket of the Mediterranean diet. All this is crucial for the overall sustainability of the territories that we govern. Let me conclude by saying that the Mediterranean diet is of course valid and viable, not just because of its beneficial effects on human health, but also because of its effects on animal health and its effects on the health of the environment on the whole. This means that we will be able to build a society in which rights can be ensured in a more sustainable way. Minister Schillaci is going to conclude this session, and he'll be able to illustrate the benefits of the Mediterranean diet, not just in terms of health, but in terms of health spending, because of course the health expenditure will decrease as a result of the lower incidence of cardiovascular disease and thanks to prevention efforts. So promoting the Mediterranean diet, which I repeat was studied in my region for the very first time, promoting it means creating benefits for the environment, for humankind, but also making more sustainable the health system. But to do that, we need the contribution of local communities and national governments in order to create an ecosystem that can enhance this important Mediterranean diet. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those inspiring words. I think the fact that we have both the Minister of Agriculture and of Health here in the room speaks volumes about the importance of bringing together that ecosystem that you spoke about. And I'm very grateful for Italy for being here and in having that vision that in the world of nutrition, we often suffer to bring the that integrated aspect together. So now I would like to pass the word to Mr. Said, por favor, please.
أدري إذا كانت الترجمة متوفرة بالعربية.
Is there interpretation? There is interpretation from Arabic. In that case, I'll speak Arabic if I may. Good morning, everyone. Minister. Good morning. Ministers, Excellencies, colleagues, representatives of local authorities and local communities, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be with you this morning to talk to you about a challenge that we face, a challenge that the international community has been facing for 20 years. For 20 years now, the world has been suffering the impact of taking the wrong political course, and therefore it is time for the world to take the correct political decisions. But unfortunately, we have embarked on the wrong path, and that is why we are now facing catastrophic consequences. This might go beyond the 20 years that I mentioned, because we've been taking bad decisions since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, because we didn't take into account some of the aspects of that revolution, for example, the need to protect the environment. Besides our lives as human beings, there are other lives and other aspects that we have to preserve in order to preserve life. Today, we are facing challenges, in particular in the Mediterranean. There, many of the countries that border the Mediterranean Sea are suffering. I think that the example of the Mediterranean can shed light for us on the situation in other regions around the world as well, when we think about the catastrophic impact that might result from the political decisions that we've taken when those decisions are the wrong ones. I'm thinking about global warming and its repercussions. Those repercussions have led to a global change. We now see droughts or torrential rain, flooding. All of these phenomena encourage us to think and to respond. And we have to respond in order to protect our food systems, in particular in the Mediterranean. In the Mediterranean, we have a lot of similarity across the Mediterranean in terms of our food systems. In the south of the Mediterranean, we are lucky because our neighbours in the north of the Mediterranean have the same kinds of food system. When I compare what we eat in Tunisia and what people eat in Sicily or in Naples, we all eat more or less the same things. And this is also true if you look at the south of France or the south of Spain. We have the same appetites for couscous, spaghetti, pasta. And this heritage that we have is something that we need to safeguard and to protect. We need to protect this love that we have for good food. The olive oil from the south of Italy has the same flavour as the olive oil that you find in the north of Tunisia in Sifax. And even the wheat-based products that we eat in Tunisia have the same flavour as those that you would find in Marseille. So our diet and its similarity is a responsibility for all of us. We all have a responsibility to protect it, because it is something that unites us. Of course, there are differences in our diets, but the similarities are greater than those differences. And it is with this in mind that we have to seek inspiration in finding innovative solutions. I'm talking to you as the mayor of a city in the south of Tunisia, and I really feel like a Mediterranean person. We have 3 main products, and I can summarize our lives in 3 examples. A shepherd with his flock, with sheep and goats. This shepherd moves from place to place and might move for 3 weeks or for 3 months. But in order to do that, he has to take provisions with him during this journey. And the provisions that he takes with him can guarantee his survival, and he can take enough with him to survive for 3 months. And that is why he takes Mediterranean products with him. He takes olive oil with him. He takes wheat-based products with him, or barley-based. And he mixes these together and takes this with him for 90 days. So these products that he takes with him are Mediterranean. We're talking about olive oil and cereals. And that's what allows him to survive for 90 days. I'm giving you this as an example of a traditional diet that is very important and one that we need to preserve. Our diets will guide us in the face of the difficulties that we encounter. And we will have to think in the same way as this shepherd in the Sahara for 90 days. We also have to move through a hostile environment like the Sahara when we are moving through the difficulties of climate change. And I think that, like the shepherd, we will be saved by these food products that we have. People have also mentioned our heritage through the Egyptian pharaohs, the Byzantine Empire, and the Greeks. And as Tunisians, we want to make use of this legacy and this heritage as a people. So once again, I'd like to thank you for the kind invitation that was extended to me. There are values that the world needs to defend, and we are all affected. We represent a great many countries, and this offers us an opportunity. We've been given an opportunity by Italy, our neighbour, and this opportunity is one that we have to take advantage of and to steer our thoughts in the right direction so that the world can opt for a diet that will provide us with the right solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that and for putting human faces on the reality of what people are living and the way that this diet and the differences in those dietary patterns manifest across the region. So finally, please, Mr. Zarour, over to you.
Good morning. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and fellow participants. Let me start a small briefing about my hometown, where I'm the mayor of Byblos city. I don't know if you have ever heard by this small city in Lebanon. Byblos is the oldest continuously inhabited city in the world, aged around 7,000 years. The alphabet was discovered in Byblos and distributed to all over the world by the Phoenician. Why am I mentioning that? My objective is to link the history not only of my city, but the history of the world to the future. That's why I stand before to discuss with you, to discuss a topic is one of the utmost important in our lives: healthy diets, cultures, and traditions. We journey through this speech. Let us explore the profound connection between what we eat, our cultural heritage, and the significance of preserving traditional dietary practices. I want to acknowledge the effort of everyone involved, including the planning committee and all those who have contributed to making this event a success. Managing healthy diets, cultures, and traditions as a municipality requires a comprehensive approach that involves collaboration with various stakeholders, implementing policies, promoting education, and creating a supportive environment. Here are some strategies that our municipality employs to improve public health and reducing the prevalence of diet-related diseases. Community engagement. Involve community members, local leaders, and experts in public health and nutrition to understand the specific cultural and traditional dietary practices and preferences within our municipality. Engage them in the decision-making process to ensure that any initiatives respect and embrace local customs and traditions. Nutrition education. Promote nutrition education programs that raises awareness about the importance of healthy eating and the benefits of incorporating traditional and cultural significant foods into modern diets. This can include workshops, cooking classes, and informational campaigns. Local food production. Support and incentive local farmers to grow traditional and cultural significant crops. This not only preserves cultural heritage, but also promotes access to fresh, locally sourced and nutrition foods. Healthy food outlets. Work with businesses and local vendors to ensure that healthy food options are readily available in the municipality. Encourage the establishment of markets and stores that offer fresh produce, whole grains, and traditional foods. Cultural events and festivals. Organize cultural events and festivals that celebrate traditional foods and culinary practices. This can foster a sense of pride in local heritage and encourage the preservation of and continuation of these traditions. Public facilities and spaces. Create spaces that encourage physical activities such as parks, walking trails, and recreational centers. Ensure these areas are accessible to all members of the community.
I'm very sorry. But
collaboration with schools. Partner with educational institutions to integrate nutrition and cultural education into the curriculum. Encourage of provision of healthy meals in schools, cafeterias, and promote physical activity during school hours.
I'm very sorry, but can you wrap up?
Evaluations.
I'm very sorry. Can you wrap up? Yeah?
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I will finish.
Apologies. Yeah.
Partnership and fundings. Once again, thank you for your gracious invitations and for allowing me the privilege of being a part of this wonderful event. I look forward to sharing memorable moments together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much to the three panelists. And I would like to go straight into the second panel. I'm sorry, we are running a little late, so we'll have to be quite precise and punchy in our responses. Thank you again very, very much. I appreciate your comments. Thank you. So while our next panel are coming up, please let me introduce them quickly. We have with us Mr. Ettore Prandini, the president of Coldiretti, Mr. Paolo Massarino, president of Federalimentare, and Mr. Gunther Beger, managing director, Directorate of the SDG Innovation and Economic Transformation UNIDO. So in this panel, we would like to move punctually into a series of interventions related to the importance of businesses, business innovation, the role of civil society and so forth, again, in valorizing and fostering the continuation of the Mediterranean diet for planet and for people. Thank you. Please go ahead, Mr. Prandini.
Let me say from the outset that it's truly a great honor and pleasure to be able to be here at the Food Systems Summit, which looks at the future of new generations and a new productive model that will hopefully look at the possibility of fostering sustainable growth, but that will safeguard the various elements of the identity of a people in a country. The Mediterranean diet is not just a model of food for us, it's a lot more. It's the future of our children. It's an identity that's related to culture, sustainability, and the environment in which we live. But it is also a battle for democracy and social justice. And this is the reason why we would like to thank in this forum the Giorgia Meloni, the Honorable Giorgia Meloni, the Premier of Italy, the Minister for Agriculture and Food Sovereignty, Mr. Lollobrigida, and Minister Schillaci, the Minister of Health, because thanks to them, we are once again talking about the central role that food can and should play in the future of our country. But that wouldn't actually be saying enough. It's not just our country, but it's the future of the Mediterranean that we're talking about, because our region can play a prominent role once again in geopolitical terms, and it can indeed create an element of sovereignty, food sovereignty, and it can also build on having obtained the qualification as intangible heritage of humanity. Today, we are before a challenge, and I think that the far-sightedness of the Italian government should also happen in many other countries in order to counter everything that is done in chemical laboratories, because that runs the risk of undermining the health of our citizens, and it does certainly undermine the identity of all peoples and countries, but it especially runs the risk of undermining the economic development of the Mediterranean region and many countries. In this respect, we believe that a great effort will be required in the area of innovation, as well as agricultural value chains. We need to walk away from ultra-processed foods made in laboratories. We need to opt for food that is grown, but that with innovation can be even more sustainable and can be produced in larger quantities. In this respect, food can definitely be an element of growth and development for entire populations. We believe that in many continents, and in particular in Africa, there must be care taken to look after innovation and the development of agriculture, because in agriculture and food, African countries can find a way to growth. We do believe that campaigns of communication for young people are crucial. Younger generations, I think, need to be taught about the lifestyle as related to food. I think that a lot needs to be done still in this area. And if our countries in the Mediterranean work on this, then we believe that we can become the driving force behind proper development, and especially the growth of new generations who will be the consumers of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
Grazie, Lynette.
Thank you, Lynette. I too would like to very cordially greet Ministers Schillaci and Lollobrigida and all of you, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak at this session. The illustrious speakers who spoke before me have clarified that the Mediterranean diet is one that is respectful of the environment and of health. I'd like to back that up with some figures. We speak of longevity. Italy is the third country in the world when it comes to longevity after Japan and Korea. We spoke of obesity, and Italy ranks third in terms of lowest levels of obesity in the OECD countries, and it has the lowest level of obesity and overweight compared to the average in Europe. And with regard to the environment, CO2 emissions account for 25% of the emissions of the whole of Italy, which is very low compared to what happens in the rest of Europe, 30%, and globally, 34%. What has the food industry done in order to contribute to these extraordinary results in Italy? Well, first of all, we applied the concept of the circular economy in a very pragmatic way. And there are some figures here I'd like to share with you. We reduced the use of water by 50% over the past 30 years, and that's a very important finding. And the consumption of electrical power has also been reduced by 20%, making our industrial sector more competitive and at the same time reducing CO2 emissions. When it comes to the reduction of CO2 in general, we were able to have an industrial sector that's reduced CO2 emissions on the whole by 25%, and that's thanks to the efforts being deployed. Now, in terms of raw materials, we have record-breaking figures when it comes to the recycling of packages. 73% of our packaging is recycled, and 81% is used to produce electrical power. So all that packaging comes back in the form of recycled materials. And in agricultural raw materials, 97% of raw materials remain in the products, and only the 3% not used is re-employed in terms of fodder for animals. This is quite extraordinary, but we want to do more. We want to participate even more to make sure that the Italian model is more and more adapted to needs. We have three dreams. The first has to do with obesity. We want to invest more in food education. There are no shortcuts to combat this phenomenon. The only way forward is to provide food education and promote healthy and active lifestyle. We would be very happy to collaborate in international programs in order to continue to disseminate appropriate and healthy lifestyles and nutrition. The second challenge is that of sustainability. We've seen extraordinary results in Italy, but there are many SMEs that are yet to begin along the path of sustainability. And for this, we need to teach the grammar of sustainability to SMEs and help them understand how to apply the principles of sustainability in their value chains and where they should invest. The third and great dream that we have is to repropose the model of the Mediterranean diet internationally, globally. The Mediterranean is not a single diet. There are many different permutations. In Italy, we eat a bit differently than people do in Spain and Greece and Morocco and Tunisia, but the principles are the same. The Japanese diet and the Asian diet also follows those principles. So these principles can be replicated across the globe, and I'm sure that Italy, the Italian food system, can contribute to promoting these principles internationally. So thank you once again for inviting me.
Thank you very much. Please go ahead, Mr. Bigger.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me as a representative of the United Nations Industrial Development Organization for this event. And as I'm sitting today here next to two representatives of the Italian agri-food and industry, I would like to say that your strong voices, such strong voices of farmers and of food industry, unfortunately missing in many emerging and developing countries, and we would perhaps not be talking about the one or other food security problem in this course of the next few days if farmers in many countries of the world has also so strong associations. Because you give farmers a very strong voice. And I'm very happy to hear from our discussions that you're also engaged in supporting farmer organizations in other parts of the world. The representatives represent the whole value chain here. Italy's agriculture and food industry is so successful because it has a healthy and functioning value chain, from production in the field to soil cultivation, harvesting technology, storage, processing industry. And this value chain is important, especially when you consider the products of the Mediterranean diet, which is dominated by fruits, vegetables, and other things, of course, goods that spoil easily. And so, all in all, it's more important to have this functioning value chain. And this is also something what is lacking in developing, emerging countries. And this is where our competence from UNIDO comes in as the United Nations Industrial Organization especially our commitment focus on post-harvest processes, for example, storaging, processing, which is very necessary for such a functioning supply chain. And we do a lot, and especially with help of the ministries of Italy, Your Excellency Lollobrigida, and also Mr. Schilacci. Italy is one of the strongest supporter of UNIDO, and thank you very much for this support. And with this support, we can do very good work, for example, in Lebanon. This is also a project funded by the Italian government, where we are helping Sada farmers to continue using their traditional production method. And this is one of these products, so we can see it and we can also smell it, and perhaps later we can eat it. And in Tunisia, dear Governor Said Sayed, we are also promoting traditional food products by creating regional quality labels and marketing, which improves the income situation of local farmers. So these are very, very concrete examples from the practice, and of course we learned a lot today, heard a lot about the Mediterranean diet, the advantages, and we have not only 800 million people who are starving, more or less. We have also 2 billion people in the world who are overweight, and this is also a very, very big problem. So I think we have a lot to do, and we should start to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And we've heard a lot about the role of industry and so forth, and we have a lot of actions to take forward. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank all the speakers who have spoken thus far, Minister Lollobrigida and our moderator, Ms. Neufeld. We will now begin one of the most salient and interactive parts of this session, that involving comments from the floor. This is one of the main parts of the event because it'll be a moment, a time of dialogue that will enable us to exchange our points of view on what we've discussed thus far. Also, we will broaden our horizon. We will leave the Mediterranean basin and will hear the voice of other countries that have strong traditional diets. We have with us Jennifer Mojica Flores, Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development from Colombia, Katsumata Takaki, the Minister of State for Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries from Japan, Frank Roy, the Coordinator of the Indigenous Partnership for Agrobiodiversity and Food Sovereignty, who belongs to the Khasi people in India, and Luis Mabulo, the founder of the Cocoa Project in the Philippines. And if we have time, we will hear from other people in the room. I'd like to ask the speakers to speak no longer than 3 minutes, please. And I'd like to invite the Minister Flores to please speak from her seat. Minister, you have the floor.
Buenos días.
Good morning to my fellow ministers. Around the world, communities have survived colonialism, slavery and poverty thanks to their traditional food systems, to their seeds and to their agricultural practices and to local food. Recently, the pandemic showed us that traditional and local agriculture is the only way of guaranteeing food security in a context of isolation or the rupture in logistics or transport for agricultural markets. In the face of the climate crisis, we cannot hesitate in terms of transforming our food systems to achieve sustainability and resilience. It is a time for us to stop thinking about competitiveness in agriculture and higher production and to look for solutions and practices to the challenges that we face through phytosanitary challenges and the climate. Is a moment for us to look at the essentials, and the essential is around us in our communities, in our territories, and using our local resources, diversifying agriculture, looking at environmental agriculture as a social practice and making use of knowledge and taking advantage of biodiversity. All of these would make our agriculture more sustainable and balanced. In fighting against hunger, the first line of defense are farmers, fishers, ethnic peoples and women, indigenous peoples. In Colombia, this agriculture produces 70% of the food that we eat, but we need support to find a lasting solution to hunger. And to do this, in our government, led by the President Gustavo Petro, we focused all of our public policies on making use of science and technological industry and working with other resources and focusing on local agriculture. We share with the Mediterranean diet the richness that's provided by two oceans, in particular the Pacific, which is very important for our food, even though, sadly, it is the coastal populations who find the highest levels of food insecurity. The most recent study shows how a third of our population, 15 million people, are suffering from food insecurity. But this indicator is worse on the coasts, where more than half of the population, including in places in the Caribbean or in the Pacific, where more than 60% of the people don't have access to the food that they need. Progress in protecting the Mediterranean diet as an intangible human legacy is something that we have to work with. Protecting food means protecting the people that produce that food, and in Colombia, besides the protection that is carried out, including with people of African descent and indigenous peoples, last month we achieved a constitutional reform to recognizing and protecting farmers and their agricultural practices at local level. As I said at the beginning, throughout the world, communities survived thanks to their local agriculture and will survive the climate crisis in the same way. Thank you very much.
Grazie.
Thank you, Madam Minister. And now I'd like to give the floor to Minister Takaki Katsumata, Minister of State for Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries in Japan.
Good morning, everyone. Japan is highly interested in the themes of this session. In Japan, we have a traditional food culture called washoku. Washoku was registered as a UNESCO Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2013, and this year marks 10 years since its registration. Washoku is a well-balanced diet consisting mainly of rice, seafood, meat, vegetables, and beans. It is well known as excellently nutritious and healthy diet, contribute to the control of calorie intake and the prevention of obesity. In fact, washoku contributes to life longevity and obesity prevention among Japanese people. Moreover, research data shows that washoku contributes to lower mortality risk caused by heart disease. Further, washoku expresses the natural beauty of the Japanese archipelago extending from the north to the south, as well as changes of the seasons, Japanese culture and tradition. It also contributes to conserve local communities and culture, with its close connection to local countries and tradition. Dietary life has its own cultural value and plays a major role in the environmental as well. Enjoying local food within the region leads to the effective use of local resources and the revitalization of the community. We believe it is in line with the 3 pillars of SDGs. Needless to say, Japanese food is not only the traditional diet in the world. Here in Italy, you have the traditional Mediterranean diet. Japan has supported the alliance related with traditional and healthy diets proposed a few years ago by the Italian government, and we will continue to contribute to the dissemination of beauty of traditional diets around the world. Thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Minister, for your intervention. And now I'd like to give the floor to Frank Roy, Coordinator of the Indigenous Partnership for Agrobiodiversity and Food Sovereignty, who belongs to the Khasi people in India.
Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, countries around the world stand on 3 pillars: the state, the market, and the communities. We have given a lot of attention to the state and to the market, but the community pillar, where the bonds within a society are vitalized, where cultures are preserved, and where a sense of identity is carved out, is often neglected. The state and the market have also increasingly separated themselves from the values and cultures of local communities, and by doing so, they have weakened the self-determination and bubbling lifestyle of a community. The Mediterranean diet is very much grounded in the traditions of the communities. It is a beacon of hope for many equally healthy but sadly marginalized food systems. The landscapes of 476 million indigenous peoples of the world are dotted with hundreds of diverse, nutritious, and climate-resilient species. A study with FAO of food insecurity in 18 indigenous villages in northeast India shows that their level of food security is much higher than the national average of most South Asian countries. Yet they have been neglected because many states consider them primitive. We are working with local schools in northeast India, introducing nutrient-rich wild edibles in tasty school meals with community support. We are using chefs to glamorize local food with local food systems. We support Mother Earth cafes for community entrepreneurs to promote local livelihoods. We use FAO and EFAT tools to promote improved nutrition for children and young mothers. The slow food movement of Italy has taught us a lifestyle of good, fair, and clean food. But the world also needs to gain by supporting the culturally driven values of caring, sharing, and celebration of indigenous people's food systems around the world. We will be holding a global gathering on indigenous people's food systems in northeast India in November 2024. We invite the government of Italy to support this global gathering and help indigenous peoples and the Mediterranean diet to co-create and co-innovate local healthy diets for all. Thank you very much, Your Excellency.
Thank you, Dr. Roy. And now I'd like to give the floor to Louise Mabulo, young activist, chef, entrepreneur, and founder of the Cocoa Project in the Philippines, who works to empower farmers and promote actions to support the environment.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful for your time. I think that this panel on Mediterranean diets is vital because it's not exclusive to the Mediterranean or to even European countries, but can be expanded and applied as a framework across different regions in the world. I have 3 points, and one of them is, well, most of them stem through youth inclusion. One of them is that we really need to take a critical look at holistic food systems. Once upon a time, food was just food, and farming was just farming, as little as 50 years ago. Perhaps the key to innovation of climate-smart and just food systems is to also reach back a tradition and be able to look at the lessons from our past and bring it forward into the scientific knowledge of our futures. A second point is that ecosystems stewardship is vital when it comes to looking at our food systems, where our farmers, as mentioned in our previous panel, were some of our first stewards to our land and in our environment. And it also makes us take a critical look that maybe we are nature. We are stewards to our landscapes, and eating seasonal, local, and healthy is climate smart and friendly and supportive to local economies. It's also important to think that the climate crisis impacts our diets, and if we are able to eat locally or region-specific, we are able to feel the impacts and loss and damage that climate has on our systems. But also on the point of the value that we put on our food, young people help drive trends, and we have the ability to mainstream sustainable food trends and diets, and perhaps preserve the knowledge that already exists within our ecosystems and bring it on to the next generation to promote a proper and just transfer of knowledge. I think it's also important to build the capacity to advance food systems amidst this global triple planetary crisis, especially knowing that we are facing an aging population of farmers, with right now the current age of farmers being 60 years old. So if young people do not engage in food systems, we could have a food security crisis in as little as 15 years. And that involves making sure that young people are conscious of their region-specific diets and are doing their part to make sure that we mainstream healthy and sustainable diets across cultures. We are a generation away from implementing a truly inclusive and holistic food system, or else we would face food insecurity. And perhaps maybe a sustainable food future with just diets can ensure that nature and production are at the very core and work hand in hand to activate a regenerative diet. And intergenerational collaboration is a must to scale that sustainable food future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luis Mabulo. We have a little bit of time if there's anybody who would like to make a comment or ask a question from the floor. Right. In that case, I'd like to ask all those who have taken part in this session on healthy, sustainable diets in the world.
Volgendo al termine.
We have now come to the end of this session, and the first thing I'd like to do is to very warmly thank the speakers, all participants as well, for the interesting statements